So welcome to Art and Heart of Menopausing.
Absolutely. Welcome everyone who's joined us. Exciting.
Yes. So, how about we introduce ourselves?
Who's joined us? Exciting.
Well, and let's not do that because they keep doing that. Isn't it wonderful to hear yourself in feedback form?
Well, it's different anyway. I've done that a few times. Yeah, let's introduce ourselves. Why don't you go first, Chitra? I think I've gone first the last few times.
So, yes, because usually I'm trying to set things up. So my name is Chitra, and my partner in crime is Clarissa, and we are Art and Heart of Menopause. I am a doctor of Ayurveda specializing in women's health, specifically peri through postmenopause. And what do I want to say? I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where it's awfully hot. So a lot of the issues around menopause are mirrored in the climate here today, right now. And my Substack is The Art of Menopausing. And I think that's it for today. What do you think?
I think that's good. That's good. Well, I'm Clarissa, and I am a Chinese medicine practitioner. I specialize in women-centric Qigong and Chinese dietary therapy, focusing on women who are menopausing and beyond. And my Substack is not the art of menopause, but the heart of menopause. That's why we're Art and Heart of Menopause. And yeah, it's been a hot day here too, which makes a change because I live in Sweden, but it's been a bit, usually it's cold. And for an Australian, that's very hard, but it won't be for much longer because I'm going home to Melbourne. But now I'm sucking up the summer. Actually, that's interesting from a season perspective. What happens if you have 2 summers in a row? Maybe that's a different way to see how we manage that one.
Sort of like living here in Albuquerque, where we have a very extended summer. But and in Ayurveda, we actually do have 2 summers. And the difference between the 2 summers is that one is hot and dry, and the other one is hot and humid. So Florida could have 2 hot and humid.
Australia has all sorts depending on where you live. So in Sydney, it's hot and humid, and very humid further north. But I'm moving to Melbourne, and I'm not a Melburnian. Ooh, I'm not a Melburnian, but I'll make that happen. And there it's kind of hot and dry, and then maybe a little hot and humid, but not anything like up in the north of Australia, where it's just like more than you can bear.
So let's talk about, speaking of more than we can bear, today's topic is, this is a very strange connection that I've got because I'm just going to be I'm not going to be able to work on the chat because my connection is wonky. So Clarissa, if you can, so I'm going to just shut down as much as I can here. And that way my connection will be better. But if you can look at the chat itself.
If I can, let me see if it will let me, because I have rubbish as well here. Just so we're clear on that. When you live in a small rural area, goodness only knows what goes down.
Too many things open, which is kind of more because I'm always doing many, many things at once.
I know you are. Yeah. There's our live chat, and we're now on this, so I can follow the chat, I think. Hopefully.
So in the time, Rhiannon is saying something about she's in Minnesota. And I can't quite read that.
Somebody has joined us, and that's
Becky
Becky. Hi, Becky. I'm having the same issue.
And Minnesota has four distinct seasons, and I would love to challenge you, Rhiannon, to distinguish between the four seasons and see if you've got 6 seasons, because hot and humid, or hot and dry, and hot and humid are 2 distinct seasons. So you may want to see if that's the case, because you can adjust your foods based on that. And then in the winter time, there are also 2 winter seasons. There's winter, which is the first winter is wet, and the deep winter is the drier of the winters, and that's like brutal cold. So if you do get snow, it's not going to be the slushy snow, it's going to be that drier snow. It'll be ice, because ice in a sense is kind of on the dry side in a very weird way. But shall we continue with today's topic? Would you like I'm like really excited about today's topic.
Yeah, I am super excited. And it's you, wonderful Chitra, that triggered this, because last week we were talking about summer and heat, and sometimes that we get really excited and want to drink a bit of alcohol, have a bit of fun. And we said, why don't we talk about beverages like alcohol, coffee, and other things that we drink that sometimes when we get into perimenopause or we're menopausing, not always our friend. But what does Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine say about these beverages? What actually can we learn from that and manage them? Because we're in a bit of women are drinking more, a lot more. The stats show us, and sadly that's leading to a lot of alcohol-related illnesses, more admissions to A&E. And on the other hand, you might not want to completely give up alcohol.
Or coffee.
Or coffee. Or everything else that you enjoy. So what is it? What can we learn from ancient wisdom? So Chitra, what does Ayurveda say about beverage? Start with alcohol, because that's sometimes I think quite a hot topic in more ways than one.
I think both are, actually, the coffee and the alcohol. And I think, when Ayurveda looks at anything, we're always looking at the context, right? So we're looking at who is it that is ingesting whatever it is. What specifically is it that they're ingesting? Where are they ingesting it in? So what season, right? Or are they doing it on the beach, at the picnic? Or are they doing it alone in bed, or at a bar, or at a restaurant, with food, without food? And we're also looking at when they're doing it. So there's so much context there. And if we just start with this bigger picture of the societal pressures on women, so women have so much on their plates that in terms of alcohol, it's a hurry up and calm down. Hurry up and, so it's this instant gratification for whatever mood they need to change, or whatever stress reductor they need to do. And coffee is the opposite, right? So it's hurry up and gain energy in the morning, or hurry up and sustain energy. So we start with that societal pressure, and there's also a lot of pressure in terms of friends. What do you do if you're not drinking, and your friends are hosting a dinner party, or they're hosting just a 4:00 gathering at some place, and there's always alcohol involved? What do you do? Do you say no? Do you say yes? So the first thing you're doing is we do in Ayurveda is we look at who is the person doing this and what specifically are they doing. The other thing that's really interesting about alcohol and coffee, Ayurveda does not say no to most anything. It says, well, it depends on it depends on various things. And but we also look at why do we say that? Alcohol and coffee are both stressors of sorts. Mainly, it stresses the liver. Anything that changes creates a stress. So too much stress is not good, but too little stress is also not good. So that's what this is doing. It's helping us shift. It's creating some sort of stress from which we could benefit from, which is when alcohol and coffee are good, but too much of that thing is not a good thing. So I'll just start off with that as far as what Ayurveda says. How about you? What happens in Chinese medicine?
It's interesting because obviously we're exactly the same. We have seasonal effects, we have imbalances in the body, we have constitutional. So that's kind of your baseline element, the 5 elements that you tend to be a bit more aligned to. But it also is the same. Alcohol can be incredibly beneficial. It can be nutritive, medicinal. It can be positively mind-altering. It can shift chi if you're stuck chi, shift states of stuck consciousness. So there's so much good things that can be there. But at the same time, it can be so detrimental, as you said, to the liver, to the digestive system, and I think in Chinese medicine, to the spirit. It can really affect your Shen, which is your spirit that lives in the heart center that keeps you centered and balanced. And it can damage your yin energy, which is exactly what we don't want in perimenopause. So it depends, and it's not bad or good. It depends on who you are, how you're using it, and when you're using it.
Yes. Exactly. And beyond that, then we can now begin to look at the specific type of alcohol, because each of those have various qualities, various ways of heating the body, and various. We use alcohol quite often in Ayurveda for therapeutic. Mostly, though, it would be like a wine, a specific type of herbal wine. But the ancient texts are also saying exactly when do you want to do this? You want to do this in good company. If you're just drinking regular alcohol, you want to do it in good company. You want to do it in safe company, which is what a lot of women have learned, that they need to make sure that they're safe when they're drinking, and say hello to Sammy. And so there's differences in terms of that, and there's differences between wines. There's differences in distilled alcohols or cocktails, which are your gins, your vodka, your rums, your tequilas. And then there's beer. But beer, I think, is more of a Western concept, because in the text, they talk about alcohol can be made from any vegetation process, from anything. And that goes into fermentation, right? So just so that we understand what these concepts are, because if I'm going to say fermented, now I know that in Chinese medicine, fermented foods are fabulous, whereas in Ayurveda, they're not so much. And there's a reason for that, simply because of the locations. But yogurts are fine. It's because anything that is fermented is heating. So heating can be gentle heating, where it helps the digestion, like in many of the Chinese fermented foods. or heating can be even more so, where we need to warm the bodies in the middle of winter when it's super cold. And, you want to have, Russia is famous for Siberia for the vodka drinking, right? Or I think Finland is too, right?
Sweden, oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Potato fermented things that are lethal.
So it's there for a purpose. And in in England, you hear of these wine-filled parties where they were drinking mead and whatnot so that they could help digest the food as well as kill off some of the bacteria that's on the food, because hygiene was not that great back in Europe in the day. So there are different things. And so I wanted to speak to the fermented thing. So it's what that does is it takes fermentation, takes sugar with a microorganism. In the case of alcohol, it is usually a yeast, and it sits in a non-oxygenated process and ferments until it becomes alcohol, and from alcohol it becomes vinegar, right? And fermented foods just use different bacteria or different kind of microorganism, and it also may it also may or may not become alcoholic. So in the case of kombucha, kombucha is a great fermented drink, but if left too long, it will become alcoholic. So we're really looking at fermentation processes
Yeah.
a lot of times.
Yeah, and of course in Chinese medicine, all soy-based products, soy, tamari, and all the variants of it, they are fermented foods. And so fermentation has different places. So yes, in the alcohol, it's the fermentation of grains, including rice, of course, because rice wine is big, but also other grains. But it's definitely fermented foods, and they play a huge role in Chinese medicine and in food, and people eat them every single day. And I think possibly because the kefirs and the dairies are not traditionally in the Chinese culture. Those things are right. But you're right, there are certainly differences in alcohol in Chinese medicine. So beers, particularly those kind of more ales, they're seen as really good for the qi, really good for the blood. And in the past, when people were more malnourished, shall we say, these made up a big nutritional component of people's diets. But today, because we're malnourished but overfed, is probably what I would say. It's not good to drink beer. It leads to dampness and damp heat in the body. We get bloated, we get digestive issues, and we put on weight. So you get that beer gut. And that's really as much to do with the person as it is to do with the context in which we live today. Whereas wine is kind of the next level up on warming. And it can be really good for your digestion. But if we drink too much of it, it creates heat in the body. We get lots of rosacea, hot flushes, and it can be really damaging to the yin. And then we think one of the hottest things that you can take in, that foods don't have literal heat, they have figurative heat in Chinese medicine, is hard liquor, the vodkas and the like. And they're actually only really used medicinally in very small doses. Sometimes you'll make your herbal tinctures and brews with that. And because they can actually damage your yin energy, they're too yang, so they can damage the yin. So there's a real distinction between different groups of alcohol here.
Yeah. So in Ayurveda, we're looking at, rather than the yin and yang issue, we're looking at vata, pitta, and kapha. And vata is the person who is very changeable. They just have to be light in their frame, They tend to be dry as well. So for them, what we're looking at is we're looking at the alcohols that are made from wheats and grains. And this is in Charaka, which is one of the ancient texts, 5,000 years ago, written down. It has to be harvested in the fall, which is really interesting because a fall harvesting, or when you harvest the food itself, also changes the quality of whatever the food is. It's also for winter drinking, and you want to eat warm, oily foods with it. So that way it doesn't dry you out so much. For Pitta is a hot person. They tend to be, they have red colorations. They're sharp in nature, good hunger. Yeah. Did you point to yourself?
Yes, I pointed to me. That would be me.
So for them, which is really interesting, you want to be drinking wine, which is made from grapes or fruit. You can also drink alcohols made from fruit. And you want them to be on the sweeter side because sweetness tends to be more cooling. So red wines are not really that great. That will bring out the tannins, and if you are high pitta, more than likely you will get headaches from your red wine. And so you also want to eat something that's sweet and cooling. So if you're in a bar and you're having your alcohol with, I don't know, salty pretzels and salted nuts, or salty chips or whatever it is, for the pitta person and the alcohol, that's just going to get them to be angrier faster. And then for the kapha person, kapha is the heavier, denser. They're already at the weight, heavier weight in general. They're more stable. Those are the people that can actually have more alcohol than the others. It's not necessarily going to give them a bigger belly so much, and they can do the hard alcohol a lot easier. And but they should be, if you want to do it optimally, to do the alcohols that are prepared with honey, the meads, and they can eat hot, spicy foods and pungent foods with them. So it allows them to, it brings out the best in them so that they can have energy from the alcohol rather than be depleted like the vata person would be, or get angry like the pitta.
That's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's sort of distinguishing and how it really affects. Whereas Chinese medicine, we're looking more at the imbalance. And, for most women that we're talking to here, they're in perimenopause. In Chinese medicine, we would say they have a kidney yin deficiency. So that's pretty common across the board because that's part of aging. And so alcohol, which can damage yin, needs to be held in moderation. What we see a lot is that a lot of women also have what's known as a liver qi stagnation. So the energy of the liver is very stuck and stagnant. You'll know if you've got that. You're irritated, frustrated, a bit restless. And what alcohol can do is that they can trigger that still further and lead to more hormonal imbalances in the body. So again, it's a moderation thing. And of course, the Shen, we always want to protect and center our spirit here in our heart. And alcohol can make us brain foggy. The mind is all scattered. We feel emotionally unstable. We don't sleep too well. So Shen and the disconnect between the kidneys and the heart in menopause is very common. Yang excess, not enough yin, hot and dry. But it's also affecting our emotional stability. So alcohol is a real watch thing for the women that we work with because they often have common patterns of imbalance over and above constitutional and seasonal issues, but because of the lifestyle, the overworking, overthinking, what I would call irregular habits that we often have. It's not that we don't know to eat well or we know to exercise, but often we get inconsistent. And then it's very easy to turn to alcohol and coffee as a bit of a prop, but is actually going to create more issues. And then we'd like it to.
Yeah. In Ayurveda, we're also seeing, we have certain things in terms of, we agree with you on the liver issues, but what we're seeing, the way we look at it is you got that basic dosha quality, and then the time of life itself also adds to it. So perimenopause lives in the pitta time of life. So they're already a little heated. Their liver is active. Their blood is a bit heated already. And they are moving into what we call vata time of life, where they start getting drier. And so those doshas that are external due to the aging process are beginning to blend with their natal ratios. So it's a very similar thing, except for when we look at pitta, pitta is about fire, right? So fire tends to go up and down. If you think of a flame, it can spurt, it can reduce. Wind, Vata is about movement and windy. So when we mix alcohol or into it or coffee, coffee tends to be dry and bitter, so that increases that wind, the Vata element. Fire will eventually dry things out. So it also will help move women into that over the aging stage. So it's something that we really want to be aware of, and at the same time not say, no, you absolutely cannot do it, because the idea, one of the reasons why we want to have some alcohol is because it reduces a little bit of our inhibition, and it can give us some energy as well. So we want to do that in celebrations, but not too many celebrations. Again, it's that balance of over and underdoing.
Exactly. And I mean, if you're a person that's, should we say, quite low in energy, you're very cold. You've got sometimes I call that a damp coldness in the body. So you'll know that if you've got a cold, your poor circulation, hands and feet are always cold. Well, you could be someone who has cold flashes in perimenopause, not hot ones. Then a little bit of alcohol, often in the form of more of a medicinal wine, can actually just lift it up. Of course, me as a pitta person went and made a winter wine. As I said to you last week, Chitra, I couldn't drink it because it was just too much for me. And it just heated me up. I looked like I could attract ships. See, it's like bright purple, orange. It was just too much. And so a little bit of what we do is also not only just knowing our constitutions or our Ayurvedic types, but also playing with it a bit, finding out what's working for you and what doesn't. Because I think just to sort of say no drinking, women in perimenopause, menopause shouldn't drink, isn't actually realistic to how our world works. Maybe you do want to have a glass, as I said, as a social occasion with friends, but sort of know yourself. And some of that's our own self-awareness and discovery of what works and what doesn't for it.
Yes. And so if we add the current season that we're in, where it's already hot and you're drinking, what do you do with that? So do you have do you have a wine cooler? Do you have a cocktail? Do you have the tequila shots? What, or do you have beer? And in the beginning, beer feels very refreshing, very cooling. I'm not a beer fan though. Never have been. I was more of a hard alcohol kind of gal with um, I don't do that anymore. But how can we manage it right now? Because the summer season is representative of perimenopause and menopause because of all the additional heat that is coming in and is being released off the planet as we're going into our second summer season. It starts releasing off of the planet, like the afternoons here, where it's hotter in the afternoon, not because of the sun, it's because it's just coming off of every single surface and rock. The heat is just being released again. So what can we do? In Ayurveda, we say, okay, have some sweetness with it because sweet will cool it down. Have more water with it. Don't do ice, but you can do some fruit juice. So if you were to do some alcohol that was hard alcohol, have pomegranate with it, have cranberry with it, have orange juice is because of the acid in it, but a watermelon with it, which is super cooling. And that can be part of the drink. As far as the wines are concerned, again, you could mix it with more water. You could also do some other fruit juices with it. And you can also add some herbs to it. And you can do the same thing with the regular alcohol. So cooling herbs like peppermint is really great in a cooler of any sort.
Exactly. So you're definitely just adding, what you're doing is balancing out some of the heat by adding in these others. And Chinese medicine would do exactly the same. It would feed in various cooling herbs, maybe slices of cucumber, watermelon, or you have like a watermelon juice in between the drink. So you're diluting it out. You're not going so hard, and obviously just not drinking quite as much.
Yes. And the other thing, you want to notice the timing, right? So you don't want to do it in the middle of the day when it's super hot, right? So always doing that balance thing. Notice what the quality of the day is. What is your quality at the time? If you're drinking and you're angry because you're on vacation and things aren't going the way you expected them to, the alcohol at first will make it feel okay, but then it'll exacerbate. So we're always looking at the qualities. Excuse me. I wanted to say hi to Nina. Welcome.
Yeah, that's Nina there.
And there was someone else who came in, which I didn't see.
Sue came in and Nina came in after the class. But maybe before we move on to talk about coffee,
yes,
shall we just ask anybody if they have any questions about alcohol and what Ayurveda and TCM can add to that, or questions, comments that have come up in our first half of our conversation? Maybe not.
I just did something super silly today. I went out for a late breakfast, which is something that I normally don't do. But I also had a veggie breakfast burrito where in New Mexico chili in it, and I asked for green chili because that's the question of New Mexico. Which chili are you? That's kind of our blue state. It's our green or red state, and so that chili was a little too much for me. So now I'm feeling the effects of it, and it's no different than what alcohol would do, except for alcohol is going to go deeper into the tissues and burn mucosal membranes, where this is just creating excessive digestion at this point. So if you hear me coughing, it's because
it's amazing, isn't it? The minute we go a little out of those routines and we go and do something a bit different, our bodies go, what are you doing?
and this was at an Ayurvedic restaurant here. So my body went, what are you doing?
So yeah. But coffee, wow. In Chinese medicine, of course, coffee is, there's a lot of similarities to alcohol. It isn't just quite as hot. And of course, when we're talking about coffee in Chinese medicine, it's a pretty new thing because coffee is not something that's traditionally found in China. When I first went to China in the 1990s, and I certainly asked my stepmother, and she's Chinese, and she says, coffee, what's that? Almost until then. But I went to China in the early 1990s. Where was coffee? What was that? Everybody just drank tea. And then I started going back there in 2010 onward, and there's coffee everywhere. But it's not a day-to-day drink. You don't have coffee in the morning. You have tea. People drink tea at work. They bring hot water and leaves, and they top it up all day. And coffee's like full of mostly people going for a treat and having coffee and a cake, and it's quite expensive, but it's all very in to do. So when we talk about coffee now in TCM, it's more about kind of what we've brought in to manage Western clients more than maybe to manage in the tradition. I actually looked at some traditional books and it wasn't even mentioned there. But so in Chinese medicine, for people more in the West who drink coffee, we would say that it's warming, it's stimulating, it can, make yang, the yang in the body, it moves qi, and it can be quite good for your digestion and your concentration, and a little bit good for your heart. It can be a bit heart protective. It can dredge your liver qi. So there are good things about drinking a little bit of coffee from a body perspective. Obviously, depending again on season and your own constitution. But on the other side, because it's warming, it can get qi to rise up to the head. So you can end up with a headache if you drink too much. And it can lead to more dryness in the body because it has a tendency to deplete the yin. And again, that's not what we want if we're already hot and dry in menopause, perimenopause. So it's again a bit of that sort of depends. I feel that there's a lot of similarities to alcohol, but it's just not as extreme.
Yes, it does because of the heating quality and the expansive qualities of it. In India, I didn't look back to see what if I found coffee as in part of the lexicon. And however, I have done a great deal of study on coffee. When I was in India, what was really interesting was that the coffee bean was being grown along with cardamom and pepper. And all of those things are warming in general, and they live together, but they have different qualities within Ayurveda. So we know that coffee is bitter. And that's one of the reasons why in the West it has become so prominent, is because the bitter taste is extremely important for the health of the liver and the blood. And so if it's not in the diet, then we are going to have elevated liver enzymes. We're going to have a lot of issues on that level. So in the United States, it started becoming super popular. And I don't think people even realized that it was a bitter taste that we were craving. And some people started drinking it with sugar and milk, right? And others loved it black. And those tend to also fall into the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha people, right? So Vata people, because it's bitter, it'll be drying, right? So heating and drying because of that bitter taste. Vata people cannot be more dry. That's just not something that is healthy for them. So what they do is they'll add sugar to it to create that sweet taste, and then they'll add some milk to it or cream or whatever to make it less light, and it'll be more dense, more fattier, and then they can get the benefits of the caffeine through the fats that are in the milk. Pitta people, yeah, you're going to have the same problem as you did with alcohol. you know? So you want to also just be aware that you can only have 1 cup a day. You don't have the whole 2, 4. Kapha people tend to again have it easier with it, but they should not have the sugar and the cream with it. And most recently, there's been this fad of adding ghee to it, or butter, or some sort of coconut oil to the coffee. And what that does is it serves to get the caffeine into the deeper tissues so that your energy levels are longer and not so erratic. So if you want to reduce some of that heating effect of the caffeine, add a little coconut oil. You can, if you want to reduce some of that acidic, add a little bit of ghee to it. And I definitely tell people to add cardamom to it, because cardamom is a spice that will allow for the reduction of the acidity of the coffee. And that's probably what is most bothersome for most people, even though it's not part of the taste. It is part of the qualities of caffeine, of coffee. But as far as tea is concerned, we're talking tea is also quite astringent as well, right? So whether it's green tea or black tea or whatever tea it is, that astringent taste is going to dry things out. So again, for Vata people, you want to add something that sweetens it up. So for instance, a while back, I was doing quite a bit of green tea, and I found that it was just too astringent for me, and I switched over to an Indian green tea, which is interesting, from a hot country, and it was sweeter, naturally sweeter. So you can play around with these different tastes to see which suits you best. And it's not so much that you're looking for the caffeine energy, it's you're looking to assist the gut and the throat to see what is going to really benefit you rather than not. And I don't know about drinking all day green tea. I'm not sure if that's a thing or not, but I don't
we do in China. It depends, because that's seasonal as well. Because you're right about the bitter. I think bitter is lacking in our general diet in the West. It's the flavor we eat least of, because we've stopped eating bitter leaves and herbs quite a lot. We tend to be more sweet and salty in our diet. And so maybe this is a way that the body gets the bitter in. But tea is so diverse again, because in the Chinese tradition, green teas are cool or colder. So they tend to be more drunk in the summer months. And of course, there's a vast variety of green teas. And I think you're right. You have to play about with the one that works for you, because some of them I think they're too bitter, they're too astringent. I just don't like them. They're too astringent for me. But others are are a bit milder. See, I don't like the Japanese sensor ones at all. I think they're pretty horrible, those ones. And I prefer a lighter green tea. But in the winter, people tend to drink a black tea because black is more warming, and it is more for the yin energy, because the color of the kidney system is blue-black. So you tend to also be choosing something that matches that, whereas the green tea is more the woody, the livery type of time of the year. So you tend to be more springy summer with the green, and then the blacks can be really black. Oof. Like pu'er teas, and they're almost fermented teas. They're deeply fermented teas, and they are an acquired taste, is what I would say, but very highly prized in China.
I love that you brought in the colors. And if you saw my eyes just go in other directions, I was thinking blue, black, and what that color is. And in Ayurveda, it's the color of Vata, blue, black, gray. Which is, how does that work with the kidney system? I'm not 100% sure, but because Vata is air and ether, and kidney is generally water, so it's just fascinating. And there are red teas. I also want to just say for our audience, a lot of current research on the effects of green tea. We're not downplaying the effects of them at all, because yes, they do have cancer reducing properties. And any food that you're taking in the right proportion, that is real, organic, as clean as possible, as fresh as possible, is going to have some sort of cancer fighting property. How much it is, I don't know. So what it means is that, yes, if you drink it in moderation, it will assist in cancer prevention. I don't even know the right word for it, because that's not part of the Ayurvedic lexicon. But too much of it is going to throw the system off in such a way that eventually any later stage disease, which is what Ayurveda sees cancer as, it's a much later stage disease, too much is going to create one of those things. So just be aware, because I know that a lot of Americans go, green tea, cancer, prevention. So
No. I think it's much more nuanced and complex than that. And, people, I think, drink tea differently in Asia. It's served with your meal. You don't drink water. If you're going to drink, you'll have teas. They're part of life. And people use them. And of course, there's a huge array of floral teas as well that are drunk throughout the year. Chrysanthemum and rose is a beautiful tea for the summer. Oh, I love that rose. It's heart-centered, slightly pink. You often see that they might add some dried orange peel and other citrus fruits into teas that you might drink in the winter to create a little bit of shift. So because the pu'er tea is very dense and hard to drink, then they'll add that in to kind of lighten it a bit. So it's a real art with tea in China, and it's very, and I'll tell the story that I went there and I didn't know as much about it then, and I was given a gift by a member of the Communist Party who was quite senior in this business who'd gone to visit, and she presented him with this block, and what the hell has she given me? Sort of a block of tea. But that was an extremely prized present to receive, and it was big, and it was like a brick, and you just break off a little bit of it. And so it has a very revered position inside life, inside the cultural life, inside the medicinal world as well, which is maybe not even how we see any kind of beverage in the West.
Yeah, we tend, but you know what? Coffee does have a ritual to it.
It does.
I don't want to downplay coffee at all. I love coffee. I'm off of coffee for now. I tend to be. What coffee is it's highly addictive, just like alcohol can be highly addictive. Tea can also be highly addictive, but there's a ritual with coffee because of the aroma, and you're putting it together. Some people, it's the only time of day when they can actually sit and have coffee, and which is why I don't tell people, unless there's an illness, it's absolutely indicated that they need to go completely off of it, because the feeling around coffee is beneficial. If you feel great, meaning you love that first cup of coffee and you're actually sitting down and drinking it, the second cup of coffee is usually not as great, neither in taste nor in energy, because you're moving through your day already. But that first one, there is an element of sacredness, and so you can have it. Just be aware that sacredness is also a part of, for a woman during menopause, we need that space, because there's so many changes. We don't want to change everything in our lives just to accommodate a smooth journey through this sacred passage from.
I think that's very sound advice, because you're at 1 cup of coffee a day, but giving yourself that break to really sip and savor and taste every moment of it. You know, you're making it, or somebody makes it while you actually get to be, cared for in those moments, if that's a barista doing that for you. And when you sit and take those moments, that's special. But when it becomes like I'm exhausted at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it becomes just about the caffeine, which unfortunately it sometimes is in the women I'm sure that you work with, that I work with, that's when we start questioning that's when it can do more damage to us. That's when it can become too hot, too dry, too depleting of yin, and the sort of specialness of it has gone. And it's, we should be looking at other things we can be doing to care for our energy at that dipping point of the day.
Yes, exactly. What else have we got to say about this particular topic? I can go on for a little while longer. I'm wondering if any. So, welcome, Lori.
Lori, yeah.
And any questions, or rather, I'm wondering. What I've done with coffee myself is, I when I get addicted to it and I feel that I absolutely have to have it every single day, that's when I quit. And I might quit for months and then start up again because of that sacredness. When I was younger, I lived in New York City, and I would go through a pot of coffee easily, you know, in the course of a morning, I think. Maybe not. Wondering if anyone in our audience has an addiction to coffee or caffeine, and absolutely needs it. And if you are trying to stop or want to modify it, do you have any questions around that? Or if you've tried to stop, what was your experience of stopping it? And it's so these lives are so interesting. I don't know where
Yeah.
he's coming from.
But I think that those are good questions, or maybe that's something people want to have a little think about and drop us a line afterwards in the comments. How do we and what do we bring in as alternatives then? If coffee is such a central part of our day, what do you replace it with? Do you replace it with, a tea, or what do you use to fill that space?
So what do you do with it? What would you do? Are you a coffee drinker?
Little, but I'm not a big coffee drinker. I'm a sort of take it or leave it kind of person with it. I don't need it. And I don't, my son is, but not me. And I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever. You see, I couldn't live without tea. I wake up and have the small glass of room temperature water to hydrate, but then I have tea, and that's important. But I also don't drink caffeinated beverages after about 11 o'clock. Just stop, because it's too residual in my body, and it interferes with my sleep. It makes me jittery and heart palpitating, and I don't like, there's a lot of coffee like espressos and strong things that I just can't drink. So I'm very ambivalent. I'm just tea.
Yeah. And I one of the properties of coffee and caffeine in general is it's a vasodilator. So what that does is it's the veins and the arteries, they dilate, they get bigger, so if we just do cold turkey, stop it, yes, we're going to have some headaches because there isn't enough water or liquids going through the vein system. There isn't enough through the arteries. So that's what that headache is actually feeling dry in the brain, in the head. That's of that. Conversely, for women who do get migraines during menopause, you might want to try a little bit of caffeine to reduce the migraine, but not too much, because it gets too heating, and heating also does it. But if you really need something quick, just a tiny bit, not espresso, really tiny. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so with no questions, anybody has no questions for us, we might wrap up there. And I think we might wrap up with saying that there's not a good or a bad with either alcohol or coffee or other beverages. I think we've said from both an Ayurvedic and TCM perspective, it depends. And moderation is probably really the key word. If you do and you can and it works for you, it's a case of not both those sort of beverages can be at the extreme ends, and they can have effects that aren't the best for us in perimenopause. So it can in moderation, but it all depends. And listen to your own body. Listen to what the responses are like after you have consumed coffee or tea or another beverage.
Absolutely. So if you're new to us, please do subscribe. I am Art of Menopausing. My name is Chitra, and Clarissa is Heart of Menopause, and that's kind of how we connected, was through similar names, similar fields, but different parts of the world. And that's a lot of what we do here is we're trying to translate these ancient into modern times. As you said, a lot of our Western culture has moved into the East or into the South, indigenous cultures, and they have to be translated. And so there's no such thing as hard and fast rules in any of these cultures. It's a matter of, oh, what is present right now? And how do we take the principles that we know work and modify them for whatever is present? So what is present for us right now is our social culture of things spreading quickly. Seasons don't really matter. We can get food at any time of the year, whether it works for the season or not. And so that's what we're doing is we're translating it for today. So no hard and fast rules. Always look at your body, know what it's doing, and every once in a while also check in to see if the body is craving something that is not healthy for itself, because it'll do that.
It will do that. Or if it starts to crave particular things, look beyond the craving and ask, what's going on in my life? Sweet is a really good example of that. It could be that you're looking for something, the mind is too scattered, or you actually are craving from other sweetness. Maybe you need a hug. Maybe you need some other kind of sweetness in your life, but the nearest thing is a cookie jar. So it's always looking that the response isn't just purely physiological in Ayurveda and TCM. They are deeply emotional, spiritual states that we're always working with. And the body is telling you quite often that that is what it's looking for.
Right. And in the case of caffeine and alcohol, it may not be the energy level that you think it is. And it also be your microbiome. So when you're looking at alcohol, you're also looking at sugar craving, right? Because remember the fermentation process. It's changing, it's transforming sugar into something that is just a little more potent.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cultures, it would say that the fermentation process of sugars into alcohol is making it a little more sacred. So that's why a lot of these spirits were brought into sacred traditions. So if you're going to do alcohol, do it in a sacred way, just like we talked about with coffee. Do it sacred. You don't want to stay in that sacred state because you're not going to be able to live. That's a constant otherworldly place. But do it in sacred. Do it mindfully, and that's always going to benefit, unless you do it every day, all the time, a lot of it.
Not the best thing. So, Chitra, before we sign off, have you got anything coming up that people might be interested?
Yes, I do. July 19th, Saturday, next Saturday, I am I will be doing a 3-hour workshop on bridging the seasons. So we're going from hot, dry summer season to hot, wet, rainy season, summer season. Or it could be called late summer. So it's a 3-hour workshop next Saturday, and that is going to kick off my 2-month membership for just working with the rainy season, and that includes something to boost the energy, boost ojas. It also includes how to reduce some things that's in the membership, and you have more access to me and my work. So that's what's coming shortly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a workshop coming up next Tuesday, which is looking at how acupressure and essential oils can come together to help women manage many of the common symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So we'll be doing that for about an hour. I'll be talking about how TCM views menopause and how you can use 6 very common essential oils and some common points and how they come together in simple combinations that you can do at home to relieve some of the most seen symptoms of perimenopause. So I look forward to people joining that too.
Wonderful. Can't wait. On Tuesday, did you say?
Yeah, next Tuesday. I'll send links out.
Yes,
coming
please.
up soon. I will. Yeah.
All righty. Well then, and thank you, Hazy, for joining us. And I guess thank you everyone for being with us here on Art and Heart of Menopause. And next week, we'll have a new topic. And if you guys have any questions or any topics you'd love to hear about the Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine perspective on, happy to field that and bring it in, although we do have dozens and dozens of topics.
We do indeed. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And yeah, get in touch and stay tuned for next week.
Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Bye.